Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Bettendorf Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Monday, April 15th, 2025. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Thank you all for being here. We begin tonight's meeting with a presentation regarding the Family Resources Coordinated Assessment Program. And for that, we welcome a lot of people who are here. Thank you all for joining us. Our Bettendorf Police Chief for at least a couple of more weeks, Chief Keith Kimball, the CEO of Family Resources, Nicole Sisney-Durbin, the Davenport Police Chief, Jeff Bladel, the Scott County Sheriff's Department, Major Sean Roth, and we have Tanya Torres with us, Judge Cheryl Traum, and two members of the LULAC Society, Tony Robertson and Tim Garcia. So thank you all for being here. You have the floor, however you'd like to make it happen. We can move some more chairs to the front if people want to share, and we will be happy to hear the report, the good things that are happening with CAP.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Tonight, we're going to do a presentation on the Coordinated Assessment Program, and as you can see, this is kind of a joint community Scott County-wide effort, and that's why we've asked everybody to come here today, because we're all been involved with this from the beginning and the history of how we got to this point. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for having us, guys. First, I want to start off with Chief Bladel's favorite slide ever.
Favorite slide.
Yeah. So I think we all remember when there was a lot of information in the paper, news in the paper about juvenile car thefts. That was very abundant in our community. And a group of folks got together and said, what can we do? So fast forward, the CAP program is one result of our community coming together and saying we have to do something about this. However, what our law enforcement partners will tell you, what our social services folks will say is you have to have a continuum of services in order to address crime and issues in our community. So that's why this is Chief Bladel's favorite slide, because law enforcement is absolutely important, but we also need prevention, the community, intervention, community and law enforcement, and enforcement at the end. And of course, we want to keep the enforcement minimal, right? We don't want these guys spending all their time on that piece. So if we partner together with all the other aspects, then we can hopefully reduce their workload. Nope.
All right, so the goal of CAP is simple. We're just there to support youth and families, and we do that through the power of connection. CAP was created in 2021. It's the intention was for an early intervention program, and it was aimed to reduce juvenile crime and recidivism, and also to help families avoid crisis situations that can lead to involvement with HHS. The only requirements for enrollment in our program is that the family has a youth that's under the age of 18. It's free, there's no insurance involved, and they must live or the youth attend school in Scott County. Those are the only requirements. And then, like I said, it's completely free for all participants. But the best part is that we wrap services around the entire family. So if mom or dad needs therapy, or maybe a sibling needs some back to school supplies, we can help out everybody in that family, and that's a really great thing to be able to do. This is the CAP team, Director Tila Shore. You may know her. She does a lot of work with gun violence and other crimes within the community. I'm the supervisor, and then this is my team. Currently have 5 care coordinators. And there's no problem that's too big or too small to help a family with. We have a network of community resources that we partner with and programs right at our fingertips. We help those families navigate these systems because it can be kind of difficult and overwhelming if you're looking for therapy, but you're not sure who takes your insurance or who has openings or who falls within your network for your insurance. So we're helping with that. We're helping get community resources for the family, food, clothing. If they're having housing instability, we can help with those kind of things as well. We basically help the family identify their strengths and needs, and then we incorporate some assessments to kind of hone in on what the issues are, the unidentified issues that they may not understand or know about, that are creating unwanted behaviors and other struggles that the youth is dealing with, and then we offer the support and the connections for that family.
So CAP, our Coordinated Assessment Program, is based off of a juvenile assessment center model. and I think that's important to point out. It's not 100% true to the model because a juvenile assessment center would be a standalone agency, and when our community got together to say, what do we want for our community, what type of services do we want, everybody was pretty loud and clear that they didn't want another nonprofit to pop up. They didn't want Decker to have to go and do more fundraisers. So that's why it's called the Coordinated Assessment Program and not a juvenile assessment center. However, it is based on that model. So at Family Resources, everything we do is trauma informed. That's a given. If you know anything about us, that's like one of our core values. It is one of our core 5 values. But we also use evidence-based assessments. Again, that's back to that juvenile assessment center model. We have collaborative care management, and then we have a really engaged CAP advisory council. 3 of them are sitting up here with us. Judge Trump is back there. LULAC is represented. The NAACP is represented. So we have a whole team of folks that has been working to ensure over the last 4 years that this program is successful and that we are measuring the outcomes that are meaningful to our community and meaningful to all of you as funders for the program. Because we want to prove that this actually works, and we have some data points that I think will help you see that pretty clearly, actually. And we're not going to sit up here and tell you that CAP is the reason that juvenile car thefts have gone down or other crime has gone down. But again, if you go back to that arrow, that slide that Chief Plato's favorite, it's one piece of the continuum. So it's absolutely necessary to continue the momentum our community has created. Oops.
So where do referrals come from for CAP, and what kind of reasons do we receive a referral? Our referrals come, I would say, a majority from the schools, either assistant principals, counselors, anybody that is working with the kids, and they are the ones that see them most often. So they really know when there's a behavior change or a family goes through a trauma or they're lacking some sort of community resource that we can help with, so they will send a referral over. We also get them internally from other programs at Family Resources, healthcare systems, law enforcement, juvenile detention center, HHS. We work with a lot of other agencies that we partner with, so if we send them referrals, they also send us referrals if there's a youth that they come across or a family that needs help. There's a lot of word of mouth, so our clients, their families are really happy with services. They spread the word and say, hey, to their sister or cousin or maybe just a friend or neighbor. We also do door-to-door. We kind of target the neighborhoods within Scott County that might need extra help, and we kind of knock on doors and hand out flyers and offer services right there, and we get a lot of referrals that way as well. And then people can also self-refer themselves if they're on the internet trying to find help dealing with the situation, and they come across Family Resources or the CAP program. There's a way to do a referral right online at our website. The referrals come in for various reasons. Some of the major ones we get was fighting in school. Maybe a youth or family goes through some kind of traumatic event, a loss, any type of housing needs or other basic needs that they might need help with, disruptive behaviors in class. The goal is to kind of get in there at the beginning of something happening. So when they get the first couple referrals and things are starting to change, or maybe they miss a few days of school, we want to get those referrals early so we can put services in right away. But we also accept them at the high school level as well, or for a youth that may have had 32 referrals so far in the school year, and now they're reaching out to us for help. So. Is it me again? Yeah. So CAP, like I said, began in the fall of 2021. Since then, we've had over 1,300 referrals, which is amazing. We've done 725 additional assessments that are beyond the ones that we do at the intake, which is assessing their strengths and needs. And we've been able to provide over 1,200 referrals, both internally, Family Resources, and externally. We make those referrals based on what's easiest for the family. So we don't refer everyone to Family Resources. If they live in Bettendorf, we find somewhere that's close to them, that's convenient, that'll most likely get them to be able to take their youth weekly to therapeutic services. But there's a lot of different referrals that we make for all kinds of different reasons, but.
I just want to point out why that's important. While we are resource rich, I would say, in terms of social services in the Quad Cities, it's a very confusing system. And we've even done research with St. Ambrose on this, that families who need help don't always know where to go. And then they need help from multiple places. And that can be super confusing. So Health and Human Services, or HHS, could have a worker. Bethany could have a worker. Family Resources has a worker. Vera French has a worker. The families that we're working with can't remember which agency is telling them what to do. They just know, I have a worker. So then our care coordinators help them navigate all of that. And sometimes they can help those workers or maybe the school understand the situation that the family's in, so they can maybe like step up services or step them down so that they can handle one thing at a time. So like if a family is having housing issues, it's really hard to focus on therapy or school or a myriad of other things, and we have to take care of the housing first. So they can help them navigate that system. And Tanya's got actually a really good success story she's going to tell you here in a minute that really illustrates like how complicated sometimes these situations are and how important it is to have that one person involved the whole time. So some measurable outcomes, successful outcomes. 82% of the youth served as of FY25 second quarter, and our fiscal years are July 1 to June 30th. Made progress and showed behavior improvement. That's huge. Out of the youth that had an incident where they received a type of suspension, 81% did not have another incident of suspension if they were involved with our services. And then 71% of families stay engaged in services consistently. So Jeremy Kaiser is not here, but this is the outcome he was really focused on. Because he knows, obviously, he works at the Youth Justice and Rehabilitation Center. Did I get it right? The YJRC? Yep. Formerly known as detention. He knows that if you can engage with a family, if you can get them really interested in services, then there's going to be success. And the hardest part sometimes is just getting them to engage. Because they've had a lot of people tell them what to do. They've had a lot of services offered in their lives. So it's like, what are you going to do for me that somebody hasn't already tried doing that hasn't worked? So 71% of the families stay engaged is a huge success for our organization. You want to tell the success story?
Yes, of course. That's where that connection part comes in. So that's a big part of what we do, is making a connection with the family and you know, gaining their trust and following through with the services that we offer. So this will be an example. When a care coordinator first met a referred client back in June 2024, they described the youth as an incredibly shy 15-year-old boy with long curly hair, tattered clothes, and a pair of socks that were so dirty it shocked them to find out they were as clean as pair. And at the time, the youth was approximately 6 foot tall and appeared slightly underweight. He has type 1 diabetes and hasn't attended school in 2 years at that time. The care coordinator met with the caretaker to assess the family's strengths and needs and co-create a care plan with goals for services. During this conversation, the care coordinator learned that the youth was born to a drug-addicted single mother who, on a handshake deal, handed over all of her parental responsibility to a co-worker, the current caretaker, back when the youth was only 4 years old. This coworker and his wife together had been providing care for the youth for the past 11 years until the wife's unfortunate death in early 2024. And with only the male counterpart of the relationship left, the coworker caretaker had quickly become overwhelmed and reached out to the CAP program at Family Resources for help. After the initial intake process, the youth caretaker was very eager to receive our help, and they agreed to start with weekly check-ins and mentor-type services for the youth. Their mentorship started with shooting hoops and playing one-on-one basketball at local parks, and after being around the youth more, it was obvious that he didn't know much about hygiene. He often wore the same clothes, same outfit for a long period of time. He rarely showered, and his hair had become irreparable damage of tangles and knots. It was hard to get him to open up, as he was often so guarded, and he wouldn't say more than 3 words per 2-hour mentoring session. The care coordinator just kept showing up and showing him care and compassion. It took about 5 weeks before the youth asked the care coordinator. His first question was, "What kind of music do you listen to?" And the care coordinator knew from then that they were going to grow together, and this would be an amazing experience for both involved. Thanks to some local resources, the care coordinator was able to provide the youth clothing, hygiene items, and a haircut. Using medical resources and advocacy, the care coordinator was able to take a training on diabetes and subsequently aided in educating the youth on better ways to manage his blood sugar. Due to a lot of footwork and a partnership with a very patient staff at a local high school, the care coordinator was able to get the youth enrolled in a high school credit recovery setting that would allow him to catch up with the rest of his original classmates. Then the youth's caretaker had an unfortunate series of falls that led him being in a coma for approximately 30 days, and the youth had nowhere to go. So the care coordinator consulted their supervisor for options, and together we were able to use resources that CAPS connected to get the youth placed in a new comfortable setting where he received a lot of support and nurturing. Unfortunately, after the coma subsided, the youth's guardian was evicted from his home for non-payment. And since CAPS services are wrapped around the entire family, the care coordinator was also able to play a crucial role in getting the youth's caretaker placed in a senior medical facility and connected to as many resources as possible to help him as well. The care coordinator's most recent update to the team about the youth's progress was that the youth had since put on a healthy 15 pounds of weight and recently told the care coordinator, "I used to never know when my next meal was coming, and now I eat all the time." The care coordinator continues to check in on the youth and provides mentoring and takes him to visit his previous caretaker at the facility from time to time.
All right, so we have some pretty impressive data points to share with you. Although, like I said, this is not all a result of CAP, but a team effort amongst multiple systems. You guys want to talk about the data?
Sure. So this is the difference between fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24. So we've seen a 36% decrease in juvenile car theft charges. We've seen a 24% decrease shots fired incidents. And then the 29% decrease in group gang gun violence. And I don't know if you want to, speak to some of that. It's some of these things. It's hard to measure. If we didn't have this program, right? What would the stats say? But I believe everything we've been through last 5, 6, 7 years. This is something that's we believe is definitely having a direct effect on what's going on, and things have definitely settled down. I mean, it's not still exists, but it's definitely settled down.
Thank you, Keith. And I would also add that, from the law enforcement perspective, we sometimes go into these crime issues that start these initiatives, or at least countywide initiatives, as feeling that we're the only one who can come up with a solution. And a lot of times what we're doing in law enforcement is responding and reacting and responding and reacting. And if we aren't finding the solutions to put it up front for prevention or even having the ability for intervention, we're going to continue spinning our wheels and continue to respond and react. And the amazing work that's been going on from CAP is that we are now diving down to the problem. The problem isn't, every juvenile that we see. It's a small number that commits a lot of the offenses. So this has the ability to target specific and get the deep dive into specific resources and provide those youth there. And I think that's where we ultimately see the results from, the efforts that are being done.
You got anything to add there, Sean?
I think they covered it
All right.
wonderfully.
I didn't want to
All right, so in 2025, in January, well, let me go back a little bit. In about June of 2024, my team got together. We all talked about how there's some kids that we aren't able to reach that we feel like might need the most help, and that's due to the parents either, working several jobs, not being available to meet with us for services, not being able to take their youth to therapy weekly, or they just don't trust and they don't want us to come into their lives. So we were really throwing around some ideas on how we can engage that youth that might need the most help, and kind of bypass, well, of course, we get the parents' permission, but have them not have to do as much. So what we did after researching some programs that are nationwide, we came upon peer groups, and I'm starting to hear more and more programs within Scott County coming up with this idea as well, so I think that's really great. But peer groups are facilitated by one of the care coordinators, and we went and decided to go with the One Circle Foundation. And what we do is we get a group together of youth that are similar in age. We serve 9 to 18-year-olds for the peer groups, but we group them up into smaller groups. We wouldn't have a 9-year-old and an 18-year-old. And we talk about some really important things that they might not be learning about in school, they might not hear, at home. and we let them have the discussion, and we just kind of facilitate the conversation to make sure everyone's safe and is able to get their ideas out. Some of these topics include body image, relationships with families and peers, goal setting, conflict management, masculinity beliefs, growing up in a digital world, and that's just to name a few. But we come up with, or we use the curriculum through the One Circle Foundation. They have a separate curriculum for Girls Circle and Council for Boys and Young Men. And Girls Circle is a lot of craft ideas or open discussions about these different topics that kind of tie in the craft. And the Council for Boys and Young Men, we do different activities and also have these open discussions. This is a nationally accredited foundation, and they teach gender-responsive circle models and interventions, and they're designed in evidence-based principles and practices. So we just started Girls Circle in January. Boys Council is going to get started this summer, and then we're hoping to keep going in the fall. And I will tell you that one of our groups is at Family Resources after school hours, but we get many of the groups into the schools during school hours when kids have downtime, study hall, different things like that. And that helps alleviate the transportation issues, things like that, and we're able to work with them at school and show up every week and continue the conversation. And so far, we've had some really great feedback from both parents and students and the school admin. So, here we go.
Yep, Jeremy's not here. You gotta do it.
All right, another new thing that we're excited about in 2025, and this is going to be happening in July, is that we're partnering with the Youth Justice Rehabilitation Center, or YJRC, that Nicole mentioned earlier. We're going to be on call after hours for police officers if they pick up a youth or they, pick up anybody that's under the age of 18 that's out doing something they shouldn't be doing. We're going to meet up with them, and as long as that youth doesn't qualify for the Justice Rehabilitation Center, we're going to be able to sit with them, kind of get an idea of what's going on, and while we're trying to reach a responsible adult to come pick them up. And then when that adult arrives, we're able to offer services right then and there and not wait like a week later or just hand them a business card type thing. We're going to try and get them set up right away. We'll also be able to facilitate peer groups for troubled youth on site, and that's a big part of it as well that Jeremy, I know, is excited about. And so our goal is to intervene with youth that aren't continuously coming through the system early so that we can get them on the right path to success. But also we want to work with those ones that are repeat offenders and that are constantly coming through so we can offer them some services or some programs that they might never have been offered, kind of help them where they're at, and hopefully they get on a path to success as well.
And so this is the other piece. Were you guys in Colorado? Yep.
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
I'll give you something to talk about.
Yeah. Go sure.
So this idea was born about 10 years ago, and the idea that we had as a group was we went out to Colorado, out in the Denver area, and they have just a fantastic model of service for, it's like a 4-county area, a lot of money dumped in from 4 counties. We don't have that, right? So we needed, but the mechanism and the model that they had was just absolutely fantastic. Law enforcement, direct intake type scenario, and then you had the community base as well. We focused our initial efforts when we started this a few years ago when we got funding from folks like you yourselves, was the community based was probably the strongest advocate to get going. We knew we didn't have a physical brick and mortar. Knowing that someday that would be fantastic for law enforcement to be able to pull up, drop off, and get those kids services right away. This is where we're headed now. It took us 10 years, but we're getting there, and that's why it's important that it's like those next step things. We're not just sitting on, we've gotten to this step and this is good enough. We're not looking at it like that. That's why we have a group of people here that are just passionate about this project and from different entities, is to show you that if there needs to be a change and we see that change, we can make those changes and talk to the groups and go, hey, because we've done it over the last few years, is say, we don't like how this is going, or maybe there's a better way, and we can restructure that and make better use of our funds and actually get better outcomes. So that's kind of what we're doing, and we have the ability to change and the desire to keep motivated and probably do better as we go forward. So hopefully these numbers that we showed you are just an indication of where we're at now and better things to come in the future.
And I think this all is, as Shauna said, it's evolved over the years where we knew there was a likelihood that they were gonna be building the Youth Justice Rehabilitation Center. And we looked at that, taking advantage of that as a place that the more the brick and mortar side that we never had before, that's already kind of gotten, funded by the county and having that. And so that is, it just seems to fit our plan in the long run. And, this is something, like I said, we meet monthly, all of us here, Judge Trom, Jeremy Kaiser from, and,
The schools.
well, and the schools, but I'm thinking of juvenile court services. And the director there, and we work separate from our advisory council. We as a group are trying, figure these processes, procedures, so that if we do have an officer that has a youth that maybe doesn't qualify, maybe they haven't even committed a crime or a minor crime, they obviously aren't gonna go to the locked part, where we can still offer them the services, but still drop them off there and then have them on call to come in to deal with. And then we as law enforcement can get back out on the streets, because a lot of times we know that if you have a situation with the youth, a lot of times the issue is not finding necessarily a responsible parent or guardian right away, and then we end up being tied up with them for hours. And that's not doing us any good, and it's really not doing them any good. So it's just a nice place to be able to drop off, and then also getting services connected right away after the fact, as opposed to waiting weeks. And with juvenile court services, as we know, that also gives referrals. Sometimes it from the time they're referred to them to the time they actually get an appointment, it can be weeks. So it's not a very quick follow-up.
But we're hopeful that we'll be able to demonstrate this is how much time is being saved in our law enforcement community by having this option, right? So they're not sitting there with that youth downstairs.
Yep, downstairs.
Waiting for an option and where that youth can go, so. All right, I think it's time for you guys to ask us questions.
Any questions?
Awesome job.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Nick or Jerry, any questions? Pipe up if so, if not, no worries.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, great presentation, no questions. We appreciate all your hard work. This is something you guys have been championing for a long time. We can see the passion that you bring to the table and that all the coordinators bring to the table, and it's showing in the great results that you've had. So on behalf of the city of Bettendorf, thank you very much for the hard work that you've already put in and that which you will continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Andrew, you got your pick of chairs. Let's take a look at our consent agenda, item E. Lieutenant Andrew Champion's going to talk us through the approval of an agreement with the Iowa Department of Transportation for some security systems and integration with the I-74 bridge, especially that portion under the bridge that does not have security at this time.
All right, well, that's not gonna open, but I brought printouts, so I'll just hand those out.
Those guys on screen won't be able to see it.
That's all right, but
It's, I don't know why.
it's odd that an Adobe wouldn't.
I can actually plug mine.
Thank you.
I can plug this in, actually, I think.
Thank you. This is Mud. That's why we have Andrew, Lieutenant Champion, I'm sorry.
Oh, now it's all clear to me.
Switch it to,
We have to do it in the back.
sorry. That's why it's not opening this one.
That's so weird.
I think it's a percent.
We were flexible.
We're not the first, we're not the last.
I'll go and get started, and she can pull that up. If not, I'll re-export it. So this has gone back to probably in the initial construction phases of the I-74 bridge project and the needs for some security on the bridge. The bridge was built with a very vast array of conduit and potential camera and sensor locations.
Yeah, that looks like it.
That works.
Yep, that works.
Thank you so much. So, thank you. So it was determined that the majority of this work would occur after the bridge was built. So going back to early summer of 2023, the Iowa DOT began discussions with the city of Moline and the city of Bettendorf about how this camera and security system was going to work on the bridge. Going through fall, we developed a plan between Moline and Bettendorf to install a series of cameras and a series of sensors on the bridge for security reasons. That went out to bid, I believe, in October of '23. It was a very complex, overly robust system, and it was so complex they actually got no bids back on it. There wasn't a single vendor that wanted to participate. This was caused by a couple factors. One of them is that we use one system in the city of Bettendorf. Moline was using a competing vendor, and Scott County at the dispatch center was using a third. So it kind of fell away for a while. Then the DOT reapproached the city of Bettendorf and the city of Moline and said, what happens if we have you install the system so it's compatible with your systems, and we will potentially reimburse you? So we continued working through that through June of '24. There was a lot of discussions during that time. I was very concerned about long-term maintenance and servicing of the system as the DOT proposed. I don't, if you look back at these plans, I think even on this one page, there's something like 18 camera installs or 20 camera installs, and imagine that beyond six of these maps between Bettendorf and Moline, and it was a massive camera system in itself. I thought it was too much equipment. I began speaking to the DOT about including long-term maintenance packages in the bid process, because I knew it would get installed, but I didn't want to deal with long-term maintenance and us not being able to service it ourselves, and this equipment has a lifespan. So through June of '24, we came to agreement separate from the city of Moline. I don't know the status on that side of the river, but we came under agreement that we would install some cameras under the I-74 bridge on the Bettendorf side and potentially a couple sensors within the spans of the bridge. Through the next couple months, August and early fall last year, we determined that we would be focusing on the cameras only. So this has kind of died and come back 3 times, and through fall into winter, there was long periods of time where there just wasn't a lot of communication back and forth. But we agreed, we worked out a camera plan, and I tried to draw some marks on here for reference, but you can see these red marks here are gonna be the railroad tracks along the old Gilbert Street. the blue marks are the river right here, to just put you into perception. Camera installations in this area are important. This is our future park area that's obviously built out, and we were gonna probably incur some expense to camera it at some point anyway, as Leach Park continues and the levee. The other reason is that we have some critical pieces of infrastructure under there. There's some, the electrical banks for the I-74 bridge are right next to the altar / aisle property. And we actually had connections to the aisle and up through Leach Park. So this camera plan was designed with 8 cameras. It provides the city of Bettendorf the coverage it needs between Grant Street and the riverfront. The DOT won't reimburse for work between Grant Street and Mississippi Boulevard. So that's why this plan is limited in the space it is. Couple good parts about this plan is so one reason the DOT asked us to deal with the planning is the DOT has, what I was told, a little more cumbersome sole source process than we do. We want equipment up there that we're used to working with, as far as our cameras and our recording equipment and our network equipment. We don't want a third-party vendor to come in and install equipment we don't work with, because we're gonna be dealing with long-term maintenance. Casey, the electrician, wouldn't be familiar with it, our IT department would not be familiar with it, and it would just be a problem. So this allows us to put the equipment in we want, so that it's doing what we want, and we're not dealing with long-term maintenance issues. The DOT also put a clause in here that if we're within that $150,000 reimbursement, and we come under, we can build a 3-year long-term maintenance package into this. So I didn't want a vendor to come in and install and not do a good job and leave it. That long-term maintenance package puts us in a good place with maintenance and to make sure this equipment's all up and running long-term. So it's really, I worked with Brent, I've worked with Casey. We've identified the fiber locations to minimize install costs. The infrastructure itself is on the bridge. This is a lot of wire pulling and some fiber work. The other component of it is it permits the DOT to install some items on our traffic standards in the downtown area. This is really putting practice into writing. That's something they're already doing. They have a few cameras on the bridge now that are on our stoplights downtown. So that's just solidifying that agreement. And as we are sharing fiber and IT connections in several places along the I-74 corridor, and this is just a continuation of that. So.
Andrew, could you talk about, there's some of these that are on bridge and majority are under bridge?
Yep, sorry about that. So this entire plan covers the underside of the bridge. So this is not to monitor roadway traffic. That's the DOT's concern. This is securing the areas under the bridge and adjacent to the bridge. So it's actually the areas that we as a police department are dealing with the most, as far as our park, areas immediately adjacent to those busy off and on ramps at Grant Street. So this is not cameraing the bridge itself. It is cameraing the underside area of the bridge. If you look at this, there's 3 different types of cameras. The blue cameras are what we call a 180-degree camera. So they have a 180-degree field of view. They're the same cameras we install at most of our intersections now. The purple and green cameras are going to be a movable PTZ type camera, and those locations were selected for a couple reasons. The purple one is due to some electrical infrastructure for the bridge that's right there, and it also provides us some camera coverage of the altar open area parking lot where we have more festivals now. Those 2 green cameras that are up along the river will actually provide us camera coverage into Leach Park and along the bike path down to the aisle, and they also give us coverage of the pier areas directly. You can really get all the way across the river with that camera configuration. So,
Any questions? Yes, Greg.
Thank you, Your Honor. Andrew, I don't know if you're the right guy to ask about this. Maybe it's something that Chris will want to weigh in, or he can weigh in at another time. I'm happy this is on consent. I'll support it. I'm fine with that. But you said tonight that this was really an attempt to monitor our property under the bridge, more so than monitoring the underside of the bridge. And if we're going to start putting cameras in our parks, is this the only park that we're gonna put a camera in? Should we talk about putting cameras in all of our parks? What happens if we put a camera in one park but not other parks? And then what happens if 3 years down the road, we decide that we can't afford or we don't want to maintain these cameras? Are we starting ourselves down a path that has greater consequence than simply approving these cameras at this time? And I'll leave that to others to try and come up with down the road, Your Honor. It's more philosophical than anything else.
This area is a little unique. It is monitoring the underside of the bridge. I look at this fall and winter, we had a graffiti artist that was running all over town. You can still see his work on I-74 by Lincoln Road. That should be coming down here in a few weeks. They're waiting for some warmer weather. That was solved entirely through our city cameras system. And that put that to an end. So you look at property crime down there under the I-74 bridge, that area is becoming more frequently traveled, those bike paths are. You look at liability for the city if there was a bicycle or an e-bike accident under there. I think it's an ideal place to provide camera coverage to. And, you know, going forward, we are looking at possibly putting some cameras in parks, especially we have a couple that have very high vandalism rates in our bathrooms, and that's impacting our ability to provide services to those residents when the park bathrooms are closed. So I think this is a conversation that's gonna come up citywide at some point, so.
Oh, and I can, you know, point out too that we've, along that riverfront, to Andrew's point, we've had other, you know, we've had these thieves steal copper all the way down from the marina and past there, the altar building, all the way going west, along the front, all the way down, as we know, the Skipper statue.
Yes, thank you.
Was literally taken and ground down and stolen. So we have other issues going on down there that we can monitor that would help with this.
I just, point of reference, we're getting ready to approve the budget. I don't know that there's any budget for new cameras in any of the parks other than here. It might be something the council has to look at some point. And as for vandalism, there's vandalism in all the city parks. And I wouldn't want to prioritize one over another. I'd rather have a plan where if we're going down that path, we start going down that path and cover everything.
Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. And thank you for the question that Councilmember Jagger brings up. I think I would say, to just echo a little bit of what Andrew and Keith said, these have been looked at in each unique situation. And while there are certainly vandalism in each park, I mean, what is kind of unique about this is that we're really getting access to the fiber on the bridge, which is what I think, you know, is part of what makes this agreement necessary. And certainly if more cameras are needed throughout the city, as council determines, I think that will be up to the council. I don't think that this puts a precedent in my mind that it's really addressing the need to get access to the fiber on the bridge. And without this agreement, we couldn't do that. I guess also just the unique infrastructure of the bridge, I think might differentiate this from some of the other park situations.
You think this might be sui generis then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Remember the origin of why, well, you looked at this in the beginning, this is really about protecting our bridge and domestic terrorism and the structure, because that is something where I think we lacked when this bridge was built on both sides. We saw weaknesses in that, and being able to monitor some type of activity, that nefarious activity that could be, you know, you hope it doesn't happen here, but let's face it, this would be a perfect target. National news.
If I can just add, when this started 20 years ago, almost, in the planning process, this was supposed to be a pretty robust whole camera system that could include speed enforcement, and there was this thing was huge, to Andrew's point. when they did this study, we were looking at probably 100 cameras.
It's more than that.
Maybe more than that. And it just almost, I don't want to say it got out of hand, but it was more than anybody ever thought of. And then DOT started constricting, saying, we're done with the project and there's not that much money left. And I think we were able to convince them that we thought there was great opportunity here that we could assist in that in a way that was very beneficial to us at primary cost to them, that would then give us the ability to do the things we want to do. And in concert with them, to Keith's point, still have some security observations that help potentially with other security concerns. So we saw this as, I guess, the best opportunity to take advantage of what would likely be the last of the funding of this to our advantage. And so that's why we think this is a smart play to do this, notwithstanding Greg's observation about other stuff that and other parks, but this window wasn't going to be open that long, and it was closing rapidly. And Andrew's done a masterful job of putting us in a position to, I think, take advantage of the DOT in this circumstance that I think has more benefit for us than perhaps them. Not that they don't have benefit from it, but I think takes care of us in a way that we think is very advantageous.
Greg again, and then Greg Adamson.
Just very quickly, if this is something to try and protect the bridge from some sort of domestic terrorism act, absolutely 100% for it. If this gives us the opportunity to do that and get a little something extra, 100% in favor of that too. But if our goal is to be in a position where we can evaluate what happens when an e-bike gets into an accident, or if we are trying to go after vandals, I bet every ward council member sitting at the table could give you a list of 3 or 4 parks where cameras would be of assistance. And so I would, if we are using it as that is the motivation, then I would suggest we do want to look at, in perhaps a future budget, allocating funds to expand the system.
Absolutely.
Greg Adamson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there any thought about, with the pedestrian crossing, is there any thought about putting anything up, looking at that area?
There are already cameras up there, Greg, that, through the DOT that we have access to.
Pedestrian?
On the pedestrian trail?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay, thank you.
Other questions? Anybody else with a question?
Yeah, Your Honor, I have a few questions here.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all the information. Andrew, a few questions for you. You used the term camera and sensor a few times in your presentation, and I just need help clarifying. Are you referring to a different type of camera when you refer to sensor, or are you using that term interchangeably for cameras in general?
It's not interchangeable. This plan only includes cameras, and the censoring or the sensor placement of sensors on the bridge was curtailed at one point or drastically reduced. And then this fall, the decision was made by the DOT to eliminate it. So this plan only involves these 8 camera locations.
Okay. And during your presentation, you mentioned that you made the determination that 8 cameras, were going to be sufficient for this particular project. What data did you use? Help me to understand that process of getting to that determination, because I guess, this is the world that I live in, and I would think that 8 may not be sufficient for what we're looking to accomplish here.
It goes through personal experience. One, as we've built out this citywide camera system, I know these cameras and I know what they're capable of based on their field of view and their resolution of these cameras. So that's one thing that drives it. It included multiple site surveys down there looking at line of sight. And if you were looking to do 100% camera coverage in any location, whether it be here in the city or before being a police officer, I installed and procured camera systems for a large department store chain. 100% camera coverage can be incredibly difficult to do. There's always a nook, there's always a cranny, there's always a pole. So this system was designed in coordination with the engineer consultant from the Iowa DOT, and we worked on these locations together. And we looked at existing points of fiber network connection on the bridge, and ultimately we created somewhat of a balance of it. But if you continue moving north of this location or to the right of the red railroad tracks, you're gonna start seeing some overlap of existing cameras we have within the city. There is a city-owned camera pole near the off-ramp behind the Bridges apartment complex, or Bridges building over here in the parking lot, and you're gonna start running into our existing cameras along Grant Street. So this was built with a balance of, are you gonna get 100% camera coverage? No, but I'm gonna be able to see and generally track people and or vehicles moving through that area without a problem.
Okay, yeah, no, completely understand on the 100% coverage, and I get that. I think in your last statement there is a perfect segue into the next series of questions. Are these cameras going to have intelligence built into them?
Could have it built into it within the budget process for this year's budget. The city, the police department has made a request for camera analytics, and that has been a 2 or 3 year goal of this police department, was deferred last year due to several other pending IT projects. So that is something we're looking at citywide right now. And and these cameras would feed into that system. So.
Okay, well, I respect that, but if we're looking at this from a domestic terrorist situation, having a series of cameras underneath a bridge that aren't intelligent doesn't really do us a whole lot of good unless we're getting intelligence from them that says, hey, there's been a bus parked under the bridge for 35 minutes. That's abnormal behavior. All this is essentially a recording mechanism. It's not proactive in nature. So I think for this particular project, my personal preference would be that these cameras need to have that intelligence built in. So we have somebody within the city is receiving notifications in real time that says, hey, we have this vehicle that hasn't moved in such and such period of time, or we have this pedestrian or this person that has been, in this particular location for such and such period of time. I think that's where the future is headed as it relates to camera technology. And if we're not if we're not looking to implement that type of technology for this particular project, I think we're setting ourselves up to be behind the 8 ball right out of the gate.
Yeah, I would say overall we are looking to do that, and that's why there was such a large budget request for it this year. There's 2 types of camera analytics. There's camera analytics built into a camera. Well, there's 3 types. There's camera analytics built into a camera. So they could do just those things. They could look for a dwelling person. They could look at somebody crossing a boundary. They could look for a vehicle design or parked in a denied area. Like, there should never be large vehicles under here. There's cloud-based systems, and there's systems which process at central servers. We very much have a camera system that's built on a central server location. We take advantage of our existing fiber. And so as we're looking at our application, our implementation of analytics here in the next year, we are looking at a system which runs off of a centralized server. That gives us some advantages in that we're not using cloud storage for those camera analytics, and it gives us one point of control. So there's very much, we will be once that budget is approved, we will be pursuing camera analytics. We have already talked to several providers, and those have included providers that can do analytics within the camera, and they've involved ones that can do it on a server. These cameras do have some analytics built into them, but they're not nearly as robust as what's going to occur in a server environment. So in my opinion, we would be much better running analytics in a server environment. And when that does get turned on, these cameras are 100% capable and compatible with that system.
Okay, so what is the anticipated cost of this system,
Which
knowing we have the camera system that we're looking to deploy, knowing that we have reimbursements, reimbursable funds up to $150,000 to this project? What's the estimated cost of the system today, as you expected today?
I may interrupt you, it's that remote feed. The DOT budgeting was at 150. This has not gone out to bids yet. We are still finalizing with Casey and Brent how some of the installations are gonna occur. There's existing conduit in there, but we're finalizing those network connections, if we're gonna be best to continue fiber connections or do long-term power over Ethernet. So some of those are gonna be finalized, and just because we have 150, that doesn't mean this is gonna cost 150. And if there was remaining funding, we would clearly opt in for that 3-year maintenance plan under this package.
I think, I guess it's, again, my personal opinion, that is the maintenance plan more important, or is the intelligence more important, that we have that funded with the IDOT funds that are available to ensure proper true security of this space underneath the bridge?
I think they are important. I would not want to put self-contained analytics on these 8 cameras when citywide we're going to a different analytics system. I would rather us be on one analytics system. I don't want to ever have to train people in 2 systems. When you try to implement 2 systems together, it doesn't always go smoothly, and you run into efficiency problems. And frankly, I don't think these cameras will be installed prior to us proceeding with that analytics purchase once budgets are approved. So I can see this as being a fluid process in which this all comes together in one little neat package, with the DOT reimbursing us for the actual camera install, and then we can do the analytics on the back end with the rest of our cameras at the same time.
Your Honor, Frank had a question.
Any other question? Oh, Nick, you good?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Frank?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to ask a question, because you're putting a program forth right now. Is this a test program that probably will be expanded in the future, and we'll need to increase our monies that we're putting in the budget to fulfill the needs? Or do you think this is the one that's going to do the job that you're trying to do?
And specifically, you're talking about the cameras, Frank, or the
Yes.
analytics packages?
The cameras.
Yeah. I don't think these cameras are a test. These cameras were chosen because they're the same model that we use throughout our city now. So I know we're gonna get the lifespan out of these cameras. I know we have a good reliability rating with them, and I know we have good support from the manufacturer. The fact is, we send cameras in for repair, and they're typically back to us within 2 weeks. We have 100% proven in this city that we can solve crimes because of this camera network. We proactively solve them. You look at instances where we've thefts going on at Home Depot, and then our officers are in a safer place because we are watching the parking lot live from across the street. We look at the number of crimes that we solve with cameras after the fact. This is what's made our police department so productive in the last 5 years in crimes after the fact. So to answer your question, I do not think this is a test. This is a continuation of a robust system that's paying dividends within this department and this city every day. You look at it from a simple traffic complaint to a traffic accident to major crimes. They're being touched every day by multiple officers multiple times a day. So this is not a continuation, or this is a continuation, it's nothing new. As far as camera analytics, that is something that may or may not go on every camera, and that's how you control the cost. So those are typically per license, and of course, as a city grows, there's probably gonna be more cameras, so that leads to the answer, yes. You're probably gonna have some expanding costs at some point. To answer that, future Chief Doug Scott, Brent and I, and Casey have a meeting this week so that we can prioritize what our plans are the next few years for that project, because we have done a great job of building it out the last like 4 or 5 years, but we do need to focus on what are the remaining areas we need to get done and what are our priorities next few years. Because to your question, yes, there is, if you just keep putting cameras up, there is reoccurring costs, whether it's through licenses, recording, and other support needs. Every time you put a camera up, there's a risk that it breaks and somebody has to go take it down. So we actually have a meeting this week. We've had internal discussions about that over the last year, and that I would rather have a system of 200 cameras that runs constantly without problems than having a camera system of 400 cameras that's prone to problems. So that is a discussion point we're having but between the police department and public works as we speak, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
If I can just try, I mean, AI, I think, is something that's always been in the future goal, and look at these cameras and integrating it with that. But as we know, technology is ever changing. So I think that is the goal. I mean, it is the goal to use AI.
And from the last 5 years, every camera we've installed has used the same camera transmission protocol. So basically the language they transmit in, and we've ensured that those are future capable. I looked back, we were pushing for analytics this year, and I know you have to start somewhere. I'm glad we did not go into it. I asked for a deferment for a year based on some other pending IT and police infrastructure projects. I was worried about having enough human capital between us and IT to get it done. And I'm gonna tell you, from the 2 or 3 additional vendors I've spoken to in the last 6 months, reference our upcoming project, I'm very glad we delayed. And one reason I did delay is because the technology is changing, and we are gonna be in a better place from a user standpoint, from a pricing standpoint, and from the number of different vendors doing it than we would have been if we had jumped into it a year ago, so.
Cool. Back to Greg.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just so I understand where we are with the analytics, is there something in the upcoming budget, the fiscal year 26 budget, to start implementing camera analytics?
Wasn't there a request in there?
Jason is nodding yes. Jason?
Yes.
Is there money in there for this?
Yeah, it's in the technology replacement fund.
And how much money is set aside for it?
I don't remember specifically. I feel like it was
$100,000, $1 million?
it's in the $100,000 to $200,000 range, if I remember right.
Okay,
160 or 180 comes to mind.
Yeah, 160.
okay. And is it your intent then to build a system that when it gets turned on, is turned on across the board? Or is this a system that when you start to build it, you can activate certain areas first? For instance, the bridge as opposed to Duck Creek.
That is, we've not definitively chosen a vendor for that plan. I'm still in discussions with 2 or 3 vendors. We've not taken any formal bids on that. I think it's something that when it gets turned on, it would be something that probably over like the course of a month, you would implement a project like that.
But it would be system-wide as opposed to hitting the bridge first.
Exactly, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Your Honor, I know nothing about this, but Councilmember Palczynski apparently does. To the extent that staff can keep him up to speed, I would be very supportive of that.
Decker, did you have something?
I guess I'm wanting to answer Greg. The existing camera system is already citywide.
Yeah, but
To
it
make
doesn't.
sure-
The thing that Councilmember Palczynski was talking about is if the camera notices something, it triggers an alert. And I don't think our cameras do that now. When we do an analytics, we're elevating the intelligence of the system so that either system-wide or area-specific, a camera will see something and trigger an alert to let the appropriate police officer know what's going on. My first question was whether that's gonna just all go in system-wide,
Yeah, I
or
understand.
whether it addresses Councilmember Palczynski's concern by going at the bridge first. And if it's gonna go in system-wide, I know nothing about this. And so somebody who does know something about it might be able to help. And that would only be my suggestion.
Yeah, I understand your question now. I wasn't sure that you were understanding that we have a system in place citywide.
License plate readers, we're stopping people left and right. Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that,
Yep.
that we all understood that we have a pretty robust system today. And this is the advantage that we're taking of for this section. But yes, we will be advancing forward, as Andrew described. And we'd be happy to include Nick in those conversations to make sure he's giving us guidance and
Well, just
wisdom.
so he's up to speed and is comfortable. He has much more expertise in it than I do. So.
Jerry, did you have something?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you very much. I agree with the police department that the underside of our bridges, where you can get a vehicle under there, are vulnerable to terrorism or just accidents. Over the past 10 years, you know, we can look nationwide and we've seen multiple instances where major fires happened under interstate bridges and it took the bridge out. And so I think this is a good project. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions for Lieutenant? All right, seeing none, let's entertain a motion that this remain on tomorrow night's consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Why?
Any opposed? All right, we'll take it up on consent tomorrow night. Let's take a look at the remaining consent agenda items as we say thank you, Lieutenant Champion. Thank you. Good job. Appreciate you.
Good job.
Is there any other remaining consent agenda item that any council member would like to discuss at this time?
I just have a comment.
Okay, Lisa?
Are you done with consent? We always talk about, you know, police, fire, Brian's area, garbage trucks, zoning and all that, all the fun stuff. But I just want to thank Kim and Jillian. You know, we never get into that stuff. And like the Kim's area, the family museum, is such a great asset. I mean, I take my granddaughter there and you see the other kids, they're going 200 miles an hour and great stuff. And Jillian's done such a great job. I get the newsletter. You know, there's been such great new programming since she's been there. And I bop in there every once in a while. I'm one of those people that love to hit the library still. And if you go up there, when the kids get out of school, oh my God. It reminds me of picking up kids like elementary school time. There's just rows of parents picking up kids and it's loaded up there. So thank you. So we never get to that stuff. We always get to the
Well earned, well earned.
zoning. So,
All right,
thank you.
back on consent. If there's any other item on consent anybody wishes to discuss at this time, Jerry's got a hand up. Jerry?
Thank you, Your Honor. On item K, the council letter indicates that the Parks Director has developed a work plan for the CIP funds. I guess I would request that he share that with the council members. I think that's great that we are actually getting a work plan for that parks money.
John?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I will get that out to council here tomorrow morning and make sure you have it, a copy of it there, Jerry. This is, keep in mind that these are always working documents. Sometimes you program $150,000 for a park and it comes in under or over, and sometimes stuff fails ahead of time when you don't expect it to. So it's always a little bit of a moving target, but that was the idea, was to start getting some a 6-year plan behind the money to prioritize our park replacement schedule.
Thank you, sir. Anything else on consent? All right, can I please entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda at this time?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, we move to our items to appear, our public hearing tomorrow night with regard to the 25-26 budget and certification of taxes. And for that, we welcome our Finance Director, Mr. Jason Schatt. You have the floor. Jason, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's right. We will hold the second and final public hearing on the FY26 budget tomorrow night. It is the last action that council will take on this budget process that started way back in probably October of '24. So we're happy to see this come to an end and get the fiscal year started on July 1. That budget is for about $113 million after internal funds and transfers. Continues to demonstrate the city's financial strength and flexibility.
and importantly, funds current service levels across all departments despite rising costs and no increase in the levy rate. We, like all folks across the country, are not immune to inflationary factors on our budgets. Things like insurance and vehicles and equipment are exceeding 10% increases annually in many places. Our departments have done a great job of trying to mitigate those cost increases through efficiency measures, and I certainly won't read everything on this slide, but I think it indicates a good amount of work on trying to keep costs down and keep those taxes low for our citizens. When you look at our operating budget, we rank very well. We pride ourselves on being lean on operations, and the chart here shows if total fees and taxes levied just for operations, so if you carve out the debt levy, how we rank against 24 other cities across the state with populations of 23,000 or more, and we're the third lowest, and you can see that that group of three at the bottom of the chart is virtually tied for first place if we were scoring from home. So the average cost of operations across these cities is $2,600 on an average home. In Bettendorf, it's about $1,880. So well below average, and I think this kind of proves our mantra of being lean on operations. By being lean, we've been able to keep the levy rate low. For FY26, we will hold the levy rate in total at $13.11, just the same as it is in the current year. The property tax impact on that average home that we talk about, for FY26, that's a home assessed at just shy of $322,000. So the impact on that home is about $46 or 2.4%. And that's due to the increase in the residential rollback from 46% to 47% this year. If folks at home are interested, they can visit the city's website, www.bettendorf, I know which city I work for, bettendorf.org/myaddress. Punch in your address here, you'll get a wealth of information about where you live, including your alderman, your garbage date and things like that, but we've also added a property tax calculator there that will show you your taxes in the current year versus the budget year. There's just an example of what that calculator looks like. As part of the budget, we've also increased some of our utility fees for things like sanitary sewer, stormwater, and solid waste pickup. As you know, those fees went into effect April 1, but across everything everywhere, when you look at the increase in taxes, you look at the increase in those fees, on that average home, we're looking at an increase of just about $71 for the year, or just shy of $6 per month. Again, a similar chart to what we looked at before. This is everything everywhere, all taxes, all fees, how we rank against those 24 cities across Iowa, and you'll see that we are 6th lowest here when we look at all taxes and fees on the average home. The average across the state is just over 3,000, and we come in at about 2,580 in the current year. As I said, tomorrow night's public hearing is the last action on the budget. This has been a great process, and we continue to make it better. Like I said, starting last October, even maybe a little bit earlier, we kicked off the initial stages of this budget, so it's been a long time coming, but if there are no questions, that's the extent of my presentation. I know you've all seen it once or twice before.
Times 10. Any questions or comments? Comments on the budget? Oh, I'll go Adamson, then Jaeger.
Thank you. Could Jason or whomever, there was a lot of stuff being talked about at the state level. Has any of that, I know there's been funnels, has any of that kind of washed out? Do we know what the state's going to be doing to us?
There are a lot of things that are still very much alive that could affect not only the city, but the EMA, the Waste Commission. So there's lots of things that are still out there. Nothing has been passed that would affect us negatively at this point in time.
I would say the next 3 weeks is going to be pretty volatile, and we got to keep all of our eyes and all of our ears and conversations with our legislators at a very high level.
It just has irritated me for decades that we have to have our budget done now, but they're not done changing stuff. I don't know how they expect us to do that, but, I mean, we've been doing it, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. They need to get their house in order first and tell us what they're gonna be doing and pass it, and then let our finance people do their work. But I know it's not working that way. I'll shut up.
We don't seem to have the influence that we think we should have on some of these conversations, and we continue to try to have that influence.
I understand.
Greg Jigger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jason, two quick questions. Hypothetically, if a council member's assessment, which came out this last week, the land value jumped by $55,000, and the council member did nothing to their land at all, it simply went up by $55,000. Is that anything that the city did or could control?
No.
Thank you. The assessments that came out that hypothetically increased somebody's assessment in a large amount, will those changes in assessments be implemented in time to change the revenues that this fiscal year budget that we are adopting tomorrow will apply to? In other words, the assessments, will they apply to the fiscal year 26 budget, or are they set up to apply to the fiscal year 27 budgets?
I really appreciate the question because it's an important point of clarity. The assessments that came out here in the last couple of weeks will apply to not this budget, which begins July 1 of 25, but to the next budget, FY 26-27 budget, which begins July 1 of 26. So in my mind, I always think of, so this is the 25 assessment year that we just got a notice of. I just remember it's 3 in a row, 25, 26, 27. So the 25 assessment goes to 26-27 fiscal year.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments on the budget? All right, that's an action item. We'll take it up again tomorrow night. I don't have anything to add to tomorrow night's agenda. Does any council member have something to add to the agenda tomorrow night? All right. Thank you very much, Jason. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We stand adjourned. Good work, people. We'll see you 7 p.m. sharp tomorrow evening.
Be there or be square.